It's my pleasure to welcome Adam Pfeiffer and his panel colleagues here. Today they're going to talk about building adaptive technical operations to support the future of biomanufacturing. And fun fact, George Skillin and I worked on the Grange Castle project in 2001. It's a small industry.
It's very small.
Over to you, Adam. Looking forward to this.
Okay, thank you, Anya. Hi, everyone. Adam Pfeiffer, SVP with Project Farma. Always a pleasure to be on stage at BMWS. Joined by a great cross-functional panel today. Angela Goodenough, and your title just disappeared. So I'll let you introduce yourself. I think it's a long title. And then I've got George Skillin, of course, VP of Client Engagement with Project Farma. And then Jeff Davis, who is, again, VP of Clinical Manufacturing for Gilead. And our title, of course, is very long. Don't worry, we will talk about AI. It's just not in there. So I guess, Angela, why don't you give us a brief overview about your background, details on AnaptysBio's pipeline, and where it stands right now in terms of manufacturing infrastructure.
Great. Thanks, Adam. So hi, I'm Angela Goodenough, Executive Director of Analytical Development and Quality Control in CMC, so very long title. I'm usually the workflow that nobody wants to hear from because we're usually sharing bad news, like lot rejections or George's facility readiness is delayed because water sample was hot. But what I love about it is that we get to touch every single aspect of the product development pipeline. And so I'm hoping to represent not only analytical development and QC, but also that broader tech ops and CMC perspective. AnaptysBio, we are a clinical phase company in San Diego. We do have a strong internal research program, but all of our manufacturing activities are exclusively outsourced. So I hope to bring that external manufacturing perspective to the panel today as well.
Great, thank you. Jeff, would love to hear about your role with Gilead and bringing clinical manufacturing online.
Sure, yeah. So Jeff Davis, I joined Gilead in June of this year, so relatively newcomer to Gilead, and that also represents a little bit of the shift that we've been on. Gilead is best known for a virology company, has been really strong in the small molecule space, and has had a relatively small presence in the biologic space up until now. And so we're expanding significantly in our footprint in biologics. My scope in Foster City is API and OSD manufacturing for clinical trials, as well as building up new capabilities for biologics manufacturing for drug substance. Prior to joining Gilead, I was with Genentech for about 25 years. And so the trajectory there is I'm excited about learning these new areas and how we can combine the strengths and lessons learned from the small molecule space into biologics. When we think about reinventing, if we're starting from a clean slate, what would you do differently now that you know what you know after the last 4 decades or so of biologics manufacturing?
Great. And George, last but not least.
Great, and yep, thank you. And as Anya said, it's such a small world. So not only did I work with Anya 25 years ago in Dublin, I worked a little bit with Jeff when I was at Spark on gene therapy related items, and worked with Angela at WuXi Biologics. So, but spent time at Merck, Pfizer, Wyeth, moving on to WuXi, Spark, and then even Moderna in terms of mRNA and individualized cancer vaccines.
Great. Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to talk about agility in tech ops today. So obviously, it's a challenge for any organization. I think in today's landscape with supply chain considerations, these external partnerships we're so reliant on, and several other considerations, I think it's vital to really, get it right first time as we navigate our way through this from preclinical development through the clinic and to commercialized therapies. Jeff, starting with you, sorry, I just jumped ahead here. With Gilead in clinical manufacturing, what are some of the unique challenges that you're facing that are maybe new, not the legacy challenges that we're used to, and what are some of the approaches you're trying to take on to overcome those challenges, if you will?
Yeah, so I guess I mentioned it a little bit as I was doing the intro. For Gilead, this is a new space, but a little bit more of an established space than, let's say, 20, 30 years ago when a company was going into biologics. So we're trying to find that right balance of how do you leapfrog and leverage the advancements that have been made without losing the energy of a startup feeling. And so we want to expand on the work that's been done by so many other large companies in the biologics manufacturing space, while also keeping that scrappy mentality of how do you build on it quickly and move quickly. So to do that, we're looking at combining, as I mentioned, the concept of what are we doing in the API space? What are we doing in the OSD space for clinical trial support? And how can we build some of that energy into the biologic space while building on the basics that everybody has seen a lot of advances have been made in the last few decades.
Sure. So a lot of moving parts there.
A lot of moving parts.
Yeah. Angela, your perspective is unique. As your virtual company, you rely completely on external partners. What keeps you up at night when it comes to challenges, new world?
Yeah, so the only constant is change, right? So last year, BioSecure, I think, threw the entire industry sort of in a tizzy. It went away, and now it's being revisited in a revised form. Exactly if it's approved and what version of it's approved in still remains to be seen. Now we know the current geopolitical space in the U.S. with tariffs, et cetera, and so especially as a company that's relying on global or external manufacturing, we have to develop and build a global supply chain that allows us the flexibility and agility to be able to react kind of in real time. We always should start from where do we want to go in the end. So the TPP, understanding what product do we want to go commercial with, what is demand and how is that going to evolve over time. That all builds directly into the strategy for building your global supply chain. So if you know you're going to need to scale quickly, okay, your suppliers, do they have a scale out, a scale up? Do they have both? When do you need it? Ideally global sites, but then do they have the same equipment at each site? Is it a direct tech transfer? Are you going to have to do process development, optimization to enable that transfer? That all goes directly into cost, timelines, et cetera. Yeah, so it's really, it's trying to kind of risk mitigate as much as you can with all of these unknowns. And so again, that's where just really relying on established CMOs that have that robust pipeline, or that robust global sites is really important to help enable that strategy.
Great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are great points. George, you've seen a lot of different modalities, over your time in the industry. Are you seeing similar challenges that companies face depending on the modality, or is it agnostic?
Yeah,
what's your take there?
A little bit of both. I would say a lot of similarities in terms of when you build these facilities, whether it's for gene therapy, mAb facility, or mRNA, individualized medicine. The facilities are all the same. They all have air systems. They all have suites. They all have, unit operations. Those unit operations are very similar across the modalities. Gene therapy may have a transfection step, but the magic is really in the chemistry or the biology. So, lots of similarities. I think the big difference that I've seen, starting when I was at Merck, BTMC project, again, big stainless steel, bioreactors, same thing with Grange Castle, manufacturing Enbrel, large 20,000 liter bioreactors. The scale is what has changed over time. So, such small volumes, a batch of Sparks product was 700 milliliters, and I'm sure many examples out there where those batch sizes are even smaller. So that's the big thing for me, is the scale of what we're dealing with.
Great. And it's a good segue into sort of talking more about some of the new technologies and that are changing the way that we're working, at least compared to historically speaking. So whether it's, technologies to help us get immediate value impact to other platforms, and I think we're probably going to dive into the AI here to some extent. But George, what have you seen shift over the years, and is there an increased reliance to successfully implement a strategy in manufacturing now on these new technologies? And I guess what have you seen either personally or with Project Farma in terms of supporting our partners to make sure that they're prepared to account for these changes in tech in their practices?
Yeah, I think for me, I'll kind of go back in time. So early in my career started out in the automation side of the business. So the Merck BTMC is an example. One of the first integrated MES, DCS projects. Go back in time, so it wasn't even called Delta V then, it was Provox for those that you remember. But looking back at that, and over time, 30 years later, we're still implementing MES systems. Have we really achieved, the total goal of paperless manufacturing and all that? And I look at AI and all the talk about AI has great opportunity. Anything that helps us save time, get products to market faster, we need to be doing it. Is it going to take 30 years for us to get there with AI, or is it something that is immediate and on the horizon? And so I'm very anxious hearing more people at the conference here, but I think it's a great opportunity, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah. Jeff, I'd kind of like to go to you, keep it with the AI, right? What have you seen or what have you leaned into with respect to using or harnessing AI to get these clinical therapies through the clinic? And is there anything, lessons learned or tips, tricks for the audience?
Yeah, so I would say that the previous speaker had a lot of really good tips there and suggestions and covered a lot of the topics that I was going to bring up. So I'll focus a little bit more on simplification. And it was touched on a bit there, but AI has so much potential to do so many different things and create next steps that it can be a exponential growth equation where you start to build an agent that then drives 10 other actions that each drive 10 other actions. And we need to keep focused on what are we doing to add value for patients. And the more we can simplify things, use these tools, these solutions to, rather than say go down 300 options, what is the pathway that will give us the most value, and try to focus on that, because it is so easy now to replicate do something 100 times. The challenge is if that results in 100 times as much work or output, then you get into needing an AI solution to interpret that and try to simplify it back to what actions can we take. So I would say that the key there is try to simplify and use the tools to get clarity on where we're going, rather than just a shotgun approach of hoping that something will stick.
Those are, great points. Angela, I'm curious, kind of your take in terms of leveraging AI to reduce, timelines, or maybe even beyond AI. Like, what are some other technologies or analytical approaches that you've leveraged successfully or considered in the overall life cycle of, your development of therapies and subsequently, hopefully, approval?
Yeah, so as a small company, we don't have any internal AI initiatives, but we are keeping a very close pulse on the industry, right? So what the Gileads, Project Farmas, right, the companies in the audience here, what are CMOs, what they're doing. So, and I think this, at the conference, the speakers have touched on just about every possible area where AI could be leveraged in. And to George and Jeff's point, we just need to see where it's going to go. But as a client, we're still responsible for oversight over our CMOs. So we need to stay equally abreast of the current technologies, how it's being used. And I think there's some additional challenges as a client in the sense of we want to make sure, so one of the things that's come up is data trending, right? There's huge amounts of data that's generated. How do we sift through that faster? How do we get meaningful results out of that quicker? And so AI could be a great tool with that, but especially from a client perspective, well, now the same tool is being used for our data that's being used amongst all of the clients. So are the appropriate controls in place from an IP perspective? From a quality compliance perspective, are the appropriate controls in place? Also, I think it's going to be important to define where are those manual touch points, right? Everything can't be 100% automated. There's still going to be touch points, data verification, et cetera, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So where do we implement those? I think that's where, from a client perspective, we're really trying to, again, keep focused on, and conferences like this help us out.
Okay, yeah. And I think as we, talking about new technologies, and analytical approaches, as we push to accelerate timelines, I'm going to stick with you. As you, working, again, virtually with external manufacturers, what are some additional challenges that you're seeing as you try to advance your pipeline beyond kind of the AI consideration as we're talking about, timelines and improving upon them?
Yeah. So kind of going back to one of the points I made at the first question is, again, working with the end goal in mind.
Yeah.
So again, knowing your product, knowing your demand is going to be really important. So one of the things that we found is, right, it's first in human. The speed to the clinic is always a really important point for all of the companies, right? We want to start showing if the drug works, and hopefully it will and can be marketable in the future. So a lot of companies have come up with these platformed approaches, especially around MABs, et cetera, which is great, right? That can get you the speed to the clinic. That being said, is even established platforms like vanilla MABs, like my company works on currently, is not every molecule is the same. And so what we found is that if you pick a CMO that's too platformed or overly platformed, and they don't have that depth of experience and knowledge to go beyond that platform, that can actually lead to bottlenecks in the end, and delays then to commercial approval, which is eventually, right, what the end goal for all of us. So finding that balance between platformed, speed to clinic, but also that technical depth of experience to troubleshoot when things go wrong, to avoid delays to approval is an important balance to reach.
Yeah, great points. I mean, George, and to you real quick, like, as we adopt all these changes in, historical technologies or how we approach these things, what sort of process lock, or, what can you put in place as a stage gate, in a sense, to, allowing facility design to move forward and construction to occur without, significant cost and schedule impacts as some of these, process considerations may change?
Yep, I think that's a huge challenge for everybody. Some companies do it better than others that I've been a part of, right? You want to continue to innovate the processes. Process development needs to develop that new process, hone that new process, lower the cost of that process, whatever. But it comes, especially when we're in the midst of designing, but then even more so building, and we've all seen the charts, as time goes on, it gets more and more expensive to make a change in that facility. So, but within a balance, you have to be able to handle change, but at the same time, you want to minimize change as much as possible. So that to me still is a big challenge. It puts all the pressure at the end of the project, CQV, CSV, operational readiness. So again, that's where I think AI can come in and maybe help those two areas optimize and shrink the time that it gets us to a real PPQ batch.
Okay, yeah. And Jeff, you're the end user for a lot of this stuff. So as the end user, waiting for this work to get done, what concerns you the most, and why?
Yeah, so I would say that we're thinking about the end goal as the wrong time point. That we often think of either approval as the end goal or turnover of a facility as the end goal. And if we look at the impact to patients, the impact is really once you start making that product and distributing it out. And that is where there's a tremendous opportunity to iterate and improve over time. But if we don't design for that flexibility and the optimization after the goal, then we will lock ourselves into doing something that was the right idea 5 years ago, but now is holding us back. So as the end user, I certainly want projects delivered on time, on budget, but even more so, I want to be able to adapt and evolve that project, the process over time. And that this is something that if we get really good at it, our cost of goods, our delivery to patients will continue on a really steep trajectory to go in the cost of goods down, delivery up over time after launch. And that's something that we really need to challenge ourselves, because we've seen just in the last few years how quickly the external environment changes, how quickly we as companies need to pivot. So the more we do to invest in the ability to, whether it's revalidate or reconfigure or adjust the process after that, what we think is the end point, the better off we'll be in the long term.
Yeah, those are great points. I think we've been talking a lot about speed to market, but what about quality? Like, are we cutting corners? Is that impacting quality? I mean, obviously that's the ultimate, judgment on any therapy. So, I'll stay with you, Jeff. Like, with respect to speed to market for a product or even a platform, right? Where do you feel there's the most opportunity to improve schedules and maybe without sacrificing quality?
Yeah, so I would say, coming back to that point of iterative improvement, that I feel the best pathway to that quality result is increasing transparency. And we had an interesting discussion over lunch, the table around how do we get value out of the data that comes in, the quality data, the deviation data, the process data. The more transparency we have, and the more we acknowledge that as much as we may say our processes are perfect when we put them into a submission, there is always room for improvement. That is the key to quality. It's not that you've thought of everything up front. It's that you're really looking thoroughly and looking for the areas that are not exactly as you expected. That's where you learn. That's how you improve the quality. And if everybody has that same mindset and they acknowledge that finding something off is not bad, it is a discovery, it's an opportunity to improve, then you start ratcheting up the quality level.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm curious to get your take, Angela, because, take it away. Yeah.
So I really, Jeff's comments about that iterative approach, right? It's not perfection, it's iteration. It really resonates, especially, again, kind of expand on what I said before. It's right, there's that speed to first in human, but then if we don't allow ourselves the appropriate development timelines, then that could actually delay commercialization. I think there's natural tensions that exist within our industry, and one of them is usually between the finance teams and the science teams, right? Finance is always faster, closer to making money, and science, technology is like, well, no, wait, there's some optimizations that need to happen. So again, I think that actually it's important for companies to look and kind of do that gut check and making sure that you're allowing yourselves that time and that space to do that appropriate development to then de-risk delays to marketing, which is ultimately most important for the finance perspective. I would also just kind of add in there that I think that it's there's also a couple of strategies kind of beyond the AI, but some of the basics that can go in to help also de-risk and help maintain that continuity of quality. So one of the things, for example, if you have a global network of CDMOs, possibly centralize your analytical testing, right? That helps, again, at least one standard from a testing perspective across your sites. It also de-risks, when you did tech transfers, you at least are segregating out and pulling out the analytical piece of that. So you're only having to focus from the technical perspective. I would also say just a small thing, but actually it really speaks volumes from a timeline perspective, is we implemented our own QP. So instead of being dependent on the QPs of the organization, right, you're thrown into a queue, you just kind of hope that they get to you when they get to you. With your own QP now, you've got that flexibility. Hey, no, I need this lot released, in a day. Can you do that? And yes, you can. So again, that helps maintain the quality, but also make sure you get that speed that you need.
Yeah, great points. George, thoughts?
Just one point, I think Jeff covered it, but the whole topic of transparency. So process development organization, different set of goals than maybe the engineering organization or manufacturing. But if the communication is there, you know that change is coming and you can plan for it. Maybe we don't build out that suite right now. Minimize the rework, right? By good communications up front. Where are you? Where are we with the project, et cetera? And kind of motherhood and apple pie, but it's very, very important, right? To have that transparency.
Sure. It's very insightful from all of you. I usually don't necessarily have time for this, but since it's near the end of the year, I always like to close these out with sort of, going around and just seeing what you're most excited for. I mean, we've obviously talked about a lot at this conference around AI. We've talked about other technologies and changes in how we manufacture. I mean, just entering the new year, Angela, starting with you, what's most exciting about the landscape, and what are you most excited about in whether personally or with your company or just in the industry as a whole?
Is AI too much of a cop-out?
No.
I think, AI, and I think, again, in particular, how does it reduce COGS, increase efficiencies, right? Again, the faster approvals, but I think it's going to be a really exciting space, moving ahead.
Yeah. Jeff?
Yeah, I would go to the fact that I've heard curative here, that we're continuing to make progress on moving the pharma industry from treatment to curative solutions. And it may not come next year, but the rapid advancement in how we look at treating patients to curing patients, that's very exciting. And I think that the combination of the different modalities is going to be a key unlock to that. It's not one modality, it's how do you use all of these and bring in new technologies such as AI to actually get to curing more and more diseases.
Yeah, love that. George, how about you?
Oh, I'll go with the AI theme again, but again, more hope, right? So think of a world where we can develop a validation master plan and push a button with our AI agent or whatever they're called, and immediately come out 200 IQ, OQ, PQ protocols that are 95% perfect, right? So I don't even know where we are on that spectrum to be able to do that. So that's the thing that's really exciting for me, is where can we apply it that's going to save time? We can now build facilities that took us 3 or 4 years to build Grange Castle. Just recently built one in 18 months. So you can shrink that down, but what can we do to even move that equation further? I think, and that's the challenge with the AI, is what's it going to do to help us do that?
Great. Yeah, I mean, all great points. I agree. I think, Jeff, to the curative piece, I like to think that's why we're all here. And so, seeing that get more efficient, seeing more therapies developed, the sky's the limit. And every year at this show, we're seeing more and more optimism in some of these uncurable rare diseases, and I think that's going to continue to trend in the right direction. So, and I can't believe we're actually under time, which means we should have some time for questions. Anya, if you want to.
Just open it up.
Yeah.
Anyone like to ask a question? There you go.
Hi, Jeff. You walked into a very successful company. They must have a lot of things that they were doing right. Maybe it wasn't in the large molecule area, but I'm guessing you don't have to reinvent everything. So what are the really areas that you've focused in on to try to help them do what they've already done well, just that much better?
Yeah, so first up, yeah, that's Gilead has been fantastically successful across a lot of different areas, and so part of what my role is to listen and learn and see how to translate that across different areas. I would say that one of the things that I'm bringing in also is how do we connect the dots by curiosity and learning, and pulling together the knowledge that the rest of industry has developed in certain areas, and the strength that Gilead has brought by going a different direction. And an example being, if you look at the amount of insourced versus outsourced for Gilead, for a company of that size, we leverage our external network more than most others at that size. And that's been a strength. And so how do we apply that thoughtfully to the biologic space as an example? So it's not about what I bring in, it's how I can connect the strengths that are existing to a new area. I don't know if that answered your question or you were going a different direction.
You walked into a very successful model, and that has been built on outsourcing and working very closely with partners.
Absolutely.
I have a question.
Very glad for that.
Yeah.
Happy to be there.
I'm curious if anyone has any examples to share on how the future of technical operations can be even more accelerated through early partnerships with the regulators. Like what's your advice, or what is your experiences in bringing the regulators along, maybe even as early stages as facility designs?
Yeah, I mean, I'll quickly, I do remember doing it way back in the Merck BTMC project. We went down to Rockville, had many meetings with the FDA on the facility design, et cetera, getting that early readout. Maybe it's just me, but I have not done that of late, right? And I think it's very important. Again, it's that whole transparency thing. If you can catch their issues up front and quicker and adapt and change your design or whatever, it's very powerful. So this new news of that, theoretically that's going to happen, I think that'll be a big benefit.
Any one last question for the panel?
Yeah, thank you so much. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, thank you so much for the very thoughtful discussion. We've heard a lot about AI today and yesterday, and actually, we were at the same table during breakfast. I had a question for Jeff. I think it kind of overlaps. I'm trying to still formulate my question. Hopefully it comes across and makes sense. So what you talked about learning from mistakes and iterating, right? And kind of to the previous point, having maybe like a local AI system, like a more explainable system that can be traceable and be favorable from FDA point of view, for example. How do you see those two aspects overlapping and kind of helping with the implementation, particularly when it comes to biomanufacturing?
Yes. So first I'll reference the previous speaker who was talking about that ability to make mistakes and learn from failures by creating an offline solution there, because obviously when you're running GMP equipment, and you want to be as perfect as possible. So the more you create those sandboxes to learn on, so it's important both for individuals, for us as humans, to learn from mistakes, but also and if you're building an agentic AI or any type of an AI solution, you need to have diversity of experiences to build a robust model. And so that's where breaking things down into smaller chunks and Lego blocks that you can then test out. You can test the extremes of how it performs before putting everything together is really going to be important. And I tend to think of it, as I described, that learning is really critical, whether you are a human being or a agentic AI solution, and the context of where have you done an experiment and something didn't work out as expected is more valuable than doing the same thing 300 times. And that's where breaking up a solution into smaller pieces that can be tested before putting them together gives you more assurance of the end result, and it allows you to work with each one in parallel and make more progress rather than trying to piece together a black box that, if it doesn't give the right solution that you were looking for, you don't know where in the 100 steps it went wrong. Does that address your question?
And, if you don't mind, like a follow-up question on that, is that's actually like exactly answered my question. Do you foresee that, and that's a question probably for everybody on the panel, do you foresee that becoming blind spot in the race to implement AI essentially, right? And like how can we be thoughtful in this like process that like requires a lot of speed, right? To implement that, thoughtfully and like make sure, we're taking advantage of the sandbox, like the offline essentially, workflow to make sure we're covering everything.
Yeah, maybe I'll just start with the key. It's been talked about a lot, but I haven't heard it as much at this conference. The bias that is created in AI models and solutions is based on the data set that you give it and the inputs that you give it. So saying that a solution is unbiased because it's being executed in an algorithmic way is totally wrong. That you can give biased data in and get a solution that you think is objective or is going to be very straightforward, and get absolutely the opposite of what you were looking for. So you have to be very careful about the data sets that you're using and the underlying assumptions around either bias or lack of bias that goes into that.
I think there's going to be more conversations in the break. So domain expertise is really key, right, Jeff? So Adam, Angela, Jeff, and George, thank you so much.